Welcome back to Bruised Not Broken, Life with Glanzmann Thrombasthenia. For those of you who are new to us, Glanzmann Thrombasthenia is an extremely rare autosomal recessive disorder of the blood in which platelets lack glycoprotein 2b3a. Hence, no fibrinogen bridging can occur and bleeding time is significantly prolonged. GT can be life-threatening and is estimated to affect 1 in 1 million. This podcast is presented by the Glanzmann's Research Foundation and myself, Taylor, and Peter. This episode is a bit different than past episodes. We recorded this episode sitting around a table with one microphone and 5 young adults living with GT. They were gracious enough to sit down with us after the first full day of sessions at this year's GRF Educational Conference. Our guests that evening were Louisa, Quinn, Julia, Emily, and our very own Peter. Without further ado, our special conference episode. All right, guys, so we are at the conference. We're in Boston. It is Thursday night. We had our first day of sessions, and today, whenever we're posting this, we have Emily, who is a board member. We have Julia, who you've heard from before. We also have Louisa, and we have Quinn. Louisa, you are 16, right?
Almost 17.
How old are you, Quinn? You're 19 now?
Yeah, I'm 19.
Okay, perfect. So you just had your first year of college. Quinn, tell us, I guess, about your transition away from home.
It's been interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't really have very many expectations going into it, but it was definitely super interesting. I went to a school that I love at Ohio University, and my parents went there. It already felt like home. I know the campus very well, and I was kind of just excited to have a fresh start, be around people, like new people I've never met before, and meet a lot of new friends. And it was super interesting going from a small town a small town, but a college with thousands of kids that I don't know. And a lot of people knew of my bleeding disorder in my small town, and now I'm going somewhere that basically no one knows, and it's pretty nice, and I don't have to tell people if I don't want to. And I thought it was kind of scary going away from home. It's about 3.5 hour drive.
That's not too bad.
But it's
enough distance to where
trek.
people don't necessarily know who you are, but it's not too far where if there's an emergency, you can't make it home, right?
Yeah, definitely. But I also didn't have a car, so.
Oh no!
So I was kind of just stranded there, but it wasn't bad. I didn't really have any bad incidents or anything like that. Everything went pretty smoothly. I had a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Met a lot of new people. Met some good friends I'm still in contact with, and I'm super excited to go back in about a month.
Well, I know Julia had kind of a similar experience when she went off to college. She was ready for people not to know who she was.
Yeah, almost exact type of experience where it's like everyone knows, like, you're the kid with the bleeding disorder, and then you go to college and you're like, oh, I can just be me.
Mm-hmm.
And then Emily ran across the country.
Yeah.
So nobody knew who she was really at all.
Nope. Nobody knew anything.
Nice. Did you find yourself kind of in a similar situation where it's like, ooh, okay, I don't have to tell people I have GT?
Yeah, because even with undergrad, I was about an hour and a half away from home, so nobody really knew anything there either.
Yeah.
And then just moving across the country was even nicer.
Well, Louisa, so what are you looking forward to? Because you just moved kind of sort of recently to Texas, so you're starting off in like a new area too. How was that for you?
Yeah, it didn't really feel too different to me. The only transition was like after I moved, these were some of my first few years of public school, so there's like a lot more kids. I never really had any issues. Like, I don't necessarily tell people I have anything. Like, if someone like sees the bruises on my legs, I'll be like, oh, what happened? I'll just be like, oh, I have a bleeding disorder. Like, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't really like bring it up if I have a nosebleed. Like, my teachers are okay with it. We have like a meeting at the beginning of the school year to explain it. I have school accommodations, and I can basically just do everything everyone else can do. And I didn't really have any issues with needing to feel like I have to hide it, but I don't really talk about it that much. But if I have an injury, like it usually makes sense to explain to people why it's probably worse than what they've seen before. But I'm a pretty like independent person, so I think I'll be fine when I go to college. Plus, I'm planning on going pretty far away. I don't want to do school in state. So
Where are you going?
So I want to go to University of Washington, which is
Okay.
it's pretty far, but also like no, my parents can visit. Both of my parents love Seattle,
Yeah.
and I'm sure there's pretty good hospitals there. It's not like I'd be completely on my own, but I think I do fine.
Well, it's a bigger city too, so
Yeah.
you'll have an easier time kind of finding a team and stuff too in place as well. Now, that's something that I wanted to ask you, Quinn, because you're in a small college town. So did you find a new team when you went to that town, or are you staying with your same team that's 3.5 hours away?
Yeah, so I stayed with the same team. We do have a hospital in Athens at OU, and it's about a mile off campus, so it's not too bad. I can go there if I really need an infusion or some labs done. But to be honest, like OU isn't very good with kids with disabilities. They won't give me my medicine. They won't really have anything to do with me. So if I want to or if I have to, I'll just go to the hospital outside. It's not too bad. But I'm staying with my crew in Cleveland, and they're really good. They have other GT patients. They know what they're doing, and I'm just really happy with them.
Yeah. No, you had to find a whole new team when you went out to California.
I did.
And that was your first time doing that.
Yeah, and it was my first time kind of doing all of my own medical stuff, like alone. I mean, thankfully, there's a GT family that lives 15 minutes from me who has been like my backbone of support out there. So they hooked me up with like their hemophilia treatment center.
Yeah.
So that transition was kind of easy for me because they kind of like took me under their wing and put me into the
I'm in my 30s and I still have a hard time like tracking down specialists that I need, or even picking up the phone and making those appointments. So to do that in your early 20s with something that you have to absolutely do is a little bit intimidating. I can only imagine. Peter still struggles as well with that.
Yeah.
So none of y'all feel like, it's not something that other people don't feel, because into your 30s, you're still going to kind of get that anxiety picking up the phone and trying to track down a doctor, and especially trying to find like the right one too.
That's something that scares me, like transitioning out of college, trying to find a new specialist somewhere. I'm probably going to be working out of state. I have to find a new hospital that knows my needs, and I have to figure out insurance too, because my saint of a mother has been doing all that stuff for me.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be pretty tricky, I think, to move out. And
Julia's got that coming up soon too. And like I said, I'm in my 30s. I have 2 kids. Like, I don't know anything about picking insurance. So I can't even imagine what, the anxiety that goes into that, especially finding one that covers your medications and stuff like that, because Novo 7's not cheap, and there's some stuff that is used off label, as we learned today, and getting insurance companies to pay for that type of stuff is kind of scary. Well, guys, the majority of y'all have all been in the same room before at past events, right?
I think so.
So when was the last time that you all saw each other in person?
Austin, I think.
Austin?
Yeah.
How many years ago was that?
5.
Well, okay, so here we are 5 years later. What do you think? I mean, y'all are all 5 years older.
Now I actually I understand more what they're talking about. I don't get bored of it as easily, because I feel like if I was little, I would just sit there and not really understand. I'd just be like, oh, whatever. But now I can actually participate in the conversations, especially since I've had more experience with bleeds, especially in the past few years. So now I know a lot more than I did before. So it's a better opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think same thing as Louisa. I think I soak in more now that I'm older, now that I can comprehend what they're actually saying. And I also feel that I'm more comfortable with GT now than I was 5 years ago. Like, I would struggle mentally, and it was a big identity thing for me, and it was hard to identify as, like, having a bleeding disorder, but now I feel more comfortable with it, and it's kind of just my normal now.
What do you think changed? Like, what do you, just growing up in general and maturing, or just...
Yeah, I think it's maturing in time. Time heals all, and, like, I was, like, when I was little, I was super torn up about having a bleeding disorder, being different, and not fitting in with the other kids, but now that, like, time has passed, like, I really don't care. I don't care about fitting in. I'm completely happy with who I am, and I wouldn't change it for anything.
That's awesome. So, no pressure or anything on any of y'all's shoulders, but you do realize that, like, you're, like, the next generation of GT. After you, there's just, like, young kids, and then before that, I think there's, I mean, Peter, Adana, and then everybody else is much older. So y'all are kind of the future of Glanzmanns and really helping other kids who are much younger than you. How do you feel about that? Because this is such a rare disorder, and there aren't very many, people that these kids can talk to. And I know that, Emily's always been great about talking to other people and stuff, but you two, Quinn and Louisa, recently y'all have kind of really stepped up, and that's a lot to kind of take on.
Well, I always get people, like, telling me, like, after, like, they know I have a disorder, they're like, oh, maybe you should be a doctor or something. Like, no. First of all, I'm already dealing with whatever I have, but also I prefer to help people in other ways. So through this, like, I'm able to do that because I already know what it's like, and I know what's helped me in the past, and I like being able to, like, give people advice. Like, even people without GT, like, they have a nosebleed, like, I know what to do to help them, like, if they can't get it to stop. And it's like, it's very satisfying, like, when you're able to like, help people like that, even if it's not in, like, a direct way, like being a doctor.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you're both very calm in a crisis, which is a really good quality to have, because, I mean, living with GT, it's your entire childhood is almost a crisis. So now, since y'all are the next generation and kind of like the younger ones and stuff, you really have the best insight as to what you think could help the future generations. What is something that you wish was available to you just within the GT community at that time?
I know, like I don't have to get my blood drawn very often, but if I had known, like, earlier, like, better tactics to help with that, like, I used to do numbing cream, didn't really work that well for me. Now I do cold spray, and I've learned that I know that it's a difficult thing for a lot of people to have to constantly be poked, but it hurts less when you're calmer about it. And I know that it's hard to be calm sometimes, but as you continuously do this, like, you will start to become more comfortable with it.
I think I wish somebody told me that, like, it's okay to be different and not fit in with other people, and it's probably better to not fit in with other people because you don't want to be like everyone else.
Average is boring, and you always have a really great story to tell.
I think comedic relief is the best coping method.
Yeah. Okay, so I know I'm used to it, and everybody else in this room is pretty much used to it because we're around y'all. But when you make a self-deprecating joke about your bleeding disorder in front of other people who don't know you all that well, what is typically the response?
They go, like, wow, that was dark. I'm like, sorry, guys.
Well, guys, so do you now, speaking of physical activity, but does anybody else at this table, do you take into account, like, when you're out doing something or whatever, like, does GT stop you from doing anything in particular?
I think sometimes, like, I went to Greece last summer,
Mm-hmm.
and I got bruises on my legs and petechia just from walking because it was, like, all day.
Mm-hmm.
And I was It was kind of painful, but I was fine. I just I try to do what I want to do, just kind of with accommodations. I'm trying color guard this year, because I need to get a PE credit. So I think the only issue I might have with it is the heat, but my iron levels and my hemoglobin are good right now, so I should be decently okay if I drink water. And bruising my hands, but I'm pretty sure I'll be allowed to wear gloves.
What about you, Quinn? Jumping out of any planes soon?
That's actually one on my bucket list. I do want to skydive.
Isn't it on yours?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's on Peter's too.
I tend to be pretty impulsive and just do what I want whenever I want.
No one at this table understands that at all.
But at the same time, I do think of GT a lot. And, for example, my friends in college, they would always have boxing matches just in our dorms, and they would always be like, "Quinn, it's your turn. You got to do it." And I'm like, "Yeah, I think I'll sit out."
You gotta do it.
But sometimes I'm bummed. I'm like, I kind of want to box. but thinking back on it, I'm so glad I did not join in on the boxing match.
Do y'all feel like you are prepared for handling this as adults one day by yourselves?
Yeah,
I think so.
It's especially for me, since I haven't had any issues for quite a while now. The only thing I'll get is nosebleeds, but I just hope for the best that I don't have to deal with anything else. I don't know. I don't really want to learn how to self-infuse. I feel like that would be difficult for me, but I don't need Novo-7 that often anyway, so I usually just need it in the hospital, so I don't have to be the one to do that.
Right.
So I just need to learn how to deal with everything else, which I've basically already done. So
I know Julia gets nosebleeds. Emily, you don't typically get a lot of nosebleeds, do you?
I get nosebleeds on occasion. Mostly, I think it has to do with the California heat.
Mm-hmm.
But throat bleeds are my...
I was about to say, that's your forte.
Yeah.
Louisa, what are you dealing with, more nosebleeds, or are you dealing with more throat bleeds?
I had a throat bleed once. Ice cut the inside of my throat, which was awful to deal with. But I deal with more nosebleeds now, especially that's probably the only thing I have to deal with, aside from bruising. But it usually happens at night, so I'll just get a tissue and then the nose clamp and then put it on and just go back to sleep and hope it's stopped in the morning. But sometimes when I'm outside and it's really hot, I feel like I'm going to get one, but most of the time I don't. So it seems random for me, so I just kind of hope I don't get one when I go outside. But I know how to deal with it if I do get one. So
now, Quinn, do you get a lot of nosebleeds?
Yeah, my nose is almost constantly oozing, just from it. If I take a shower, if I'm working out, and during the winter, it's bleeding the whole time. But most of the time, it's not gushing, it's not coming out. It's just dry blood in my nose. But in the winter, I'll start having some pretty bad nosebleeds. But I can always handle them, even though they're super annoying and pretty demoralizing. But it's just something I got to deal with. And
well, all of you've talked about how you handle it yourselves. Exactly how do you do that? Do you carry certain things with you, or do you have a routine down as to exactly what you do?
I have a nosebleed kit. I bring it to school. So I take apart 2 tissue boxes and pull the tissues out and put it all in a big plastic bag. And then I have gloves and nose clamps. So first of all, I have better quality tissues at school. So even if I'm not having a nosebleed, it's good to just have that. But if it happens during school, usually I'll just get the tissue and sit there and hold it and just listen to the teacher or whatever. But if it's bad enough, then I'll just go to the nurse.
What about you, Quinn? What is in your toolkit?
So I have a med kit at my school that I take to college.
Yeah.
And it's just it's basically a big tackle box, and it just has any sort of bleeding related medical equipment I need. And I'll usually take some bleed seeds, which is fibers, twist them up, and then just shove them up my nose as far as I can, and then I'll hold pressure on it. And usually, if it's a good day, it'll stop in one day. Sometimes it'll go on for a couple days, but when I have it packed like that, I don't really go out. I just kind of stay in my room, and I don't really want to be seen with a whole bunch of stuff up my nose. So.
Emily, I haven't had the pleasure of seeing somebody or really hearing a lot about how somebody treats a throat bleed. How do you manage those?
They're just annoying because you're basically like choking on your own blood. So usually like nosebleeds I'll let go for a while, but throat bleeds I start TXA right away.
I can imagine with throat bleeds you have to deal with a lot of nausea.
Yeah, usually it's kind of gross, but usually I just have like a spit cup.
Nosebleeds, like, I've never had at least as far as I know, I've never really had a nosebleed that's lasted more than a day.
Uh-huh.
Like, the most has been, like, probably, like, 8 hours straight.
Okay.
So, I don't know, I get out on my sheets sometimes, but I have, like, extra padding under where I sleep, so it doesn't go straight through the mattress and stuff. But, I don't know, I'll get on, like, my clothes, or, like, a little bit on the floor, or the bed, but, like, it's never, I always have my tissue on my nose, so unless it's, like, awful, like, it's just not gonna be on all over the place.
Right.
Yeah, if you take, like, all the sheets and pillowcases off my bed, it looks like somebody was murdered in it.
Yeah, no one take a little black light into any of our rooms or bathrooms.
Yeah.
That's how me and I distinguish our pillows, because one's covered in blood and his isn't.
Now, Julia, you have a little bit more. I think your blood bag is kind of similar to what Quinn was saying. His tackle box is. We've always referred to it as the blood bag. But what do you have in your emergency blood bag?
I have Surgisil. I used to carry Fibrillar, but now I use Surgisil more. And I carry a few things in there. I have like a thing of Amicar, which I don't really take anymore. And then I have a small thing of epinephrine, because occasionally I can get a hold of epinephrine. If I don't have that on me, I'll have Afrin, and I'll have a little container of Q-tips. So that way I can soak the Surgisil and with either the Afrin or epinephrine, put it up my nose to where the spot I believe it's bleeding. And then I have a nose clamp as well, and I'll put the nose clamp on and sit there for like an hour or two, hope it stops. If it doesn't stop, maybe like put more in and just sit there. Sometimes it's like, it takes several days for a nosebleed to stop. But, you just try to write it out, read a book, do homework, watch TV, like...
Sometimes it's like pulling a slug out of your nose.
It's disgusting.
I have like 2 different types of nosebleeds.
Mm-hmm.
Like one where it's just kind of coming out, and then one where like there are clots. So usually when there's ones with the clots, like if I don't blow those clots out, my nosebleed won't stop. So
Yes.
I get like a few tissues and blow it out into that tissue and then throw that away, and then just put it again and hope it stops before another big clot forms. Because I don't know, I've had like multiple different kinds of nosebleeds, and they're like, there's different ways to stop each one, and I just kind of have to hope that it's not the one with the clots, because that one's just annoying to deal with.
I've had to do that too, like especially with like the Surgisil packing. Like I've had to take it out after putting it in like that day, because I know it's not hitting the spot that's bleeding, and so it's like it's ineffective. I can't get the packing to where it's bleeding, so I'm gonna take it out and try to repack it and get to the spot.
Louisa, you mentioned earlier that like sometimes you think you're gonna get a nosebleed, so that made me super curious. Are there any warning signs for y'all? Like, have y'all noticed as you've gotten older of any warning signs?
I think a lot of people mention like when they have nosebleeds, like they don't notice, but like I feel it before it even comes out of my nose. Like I'll wake up in the middle of the night. Like some people sleep through their nosebleeds, but like I'll wake up if I feel like I'm about to have one, and like my body just wakes me up. So I know before. And it's kind of annoying, like even if it's like a little small one, it'll do that and I'll wake up and then I can't go back to sleep. But I can tell, especially like at night, I guess my body just wakes me up and I'm like, my nose feels kind of weird. I'm probably about to have a nosebleed. If I go outside and it's super hot, my nose just kind of feels dry and feels like it's just like a good place for a nosebleed to start.
It's hard to like describe the feeling, but
Yeah.
like, you kind of just know when it's gonna start bleeding, or like an approximate time. Like it's probably gonna bleed in the next like 5 minutes or so, and I usually wake up to it bleeding. I don't wake up to the feeling that it's about to bleed, but when I wake up and it's bleeding, it's just like, all right, I'll use my blanket or something to hold it. I hear about mouth bleeds though, like how you guys have experienced those throughout childhood, teenage years?
I had to get like 2 teeth pulled or something, and like we tried a bunch of different kinds of medicine, and it just wasn't working. So then we tried a frozen tea bag, and that was finally what it stopped. Like what stopped it. It's crazy because like you can buy that for like $1, and you just put it in the freezer and put it on the wound in your mouth, and I don't know why, some kind of chemical in it or something, but it really helped.
Have you guys gotten your wisdom teeth out or anything?
Yes.
Yeah.
I might
How'd
need
it
to.
go? Was it like an inpatient whole procedure?
Mine was. All 4 of mine were impacted, and then I had the procedure scheduled, but then they got scared and canceled it. And then one of mine ruptured an abscess, so then it became like an emergency situation. Yeah, so, but it wasn't bad. I was in the hospital for like maybe 2 days. My face was really swollen.
For how long after?
Maybe like 3 days. It bruised.
Oh.
So like once the swelling went down, my face just turned like that like gross bruised yellow.
Yeah.
It's like the
Yeah.
greenish yellow.
Yeah.
Like it didn't turn like the pretty like purple blue. No, just all green yellow.
Yeah.
I mean, mine was fine. Other than it was like a day after my stitches ruptured, and so I had to go back and get that fixed because I was bleeding quite a bit. But once he stitched it back up, and he used, I can't remember what he used because I was like under anesthesia and stuff, but he was able to stitch it back up, and it was fine. And it was just swelling that was really bad.
So I'm about to get mine out. They're already like poking through in the back, so I'm a little stressed out about it. I don't know what to expect. I don't know how much it's gonna bleed, how different it's gonna be from like a normal person getting their wisdom teeth out. So
Emily, did you use Novo beforehand?
I got Novo and platelets beforehand.
Okay, and you, I don't think got either.
I didn't get anything beforehand. I like took Amicar beforehand, and then I had like blood on the ready and platelets for the ready in case anything bad happened, which luckily nothing did. But they had stuff to the side just in case, which they never thought anything bad was going to happen.
Louisa, have you had your wisdom teeth taken out
No, I have like they're growing in kind of weird,
yet?
so I might need that done eventually. But we're trying to like not do it if we don't
Postpone
have
it
to.
if you, yeah.
Yeah.
Peter,
Yeah.
do you still have your wisdom teeth?
No, I had them taken out before my sophomore year of college.
Do tell us more.
I had HLA match platelets beforehand, and everything went really well. I just had really bad black eyes after. That's what I remember. And you really want to eat solid foods for a while, and you can't.
I'm a big fan of smoothies, so I think I'll be alright in that aspect.
Can't use a straw though.
Use a spoon.
Or I'll have someone else feed it to me or something.
Well, guys, I want to know what exactly you would like to kind of see from the foundation in the future, what you think that we could do as a foundation that could be helpful for not only just your generation, but for those younger ones who are starting to kind of go through a lot of the same things that y'all went through.
I think a really important thing, especially for me, is representation. So like not even just like a famous person or like someone in like a book or a movie, but just more people knowing about it. Like even if it's not GT specifically, probably preferably GT and specifically since it's so rare and most people like know other bleeding disorders but not GT. I think just if more people know about stuff like that in general, it's good because there's so many misconceptions and like even with the awareness that's already out there, like people don't understand.
You mean you won't bleed out if you just get a paper cut?
Exactly, and it frustrates me to hear some of the stuff people think, but I don't know, it's not really their fault entirely because, I don't know, like, there are plenty of other rare disorders that people have no idea about, and, like, it would be amazing if everyone could know every single disorder, but it's not realistic. It's just good to, like, spread knowledge to who can learn.
Yeah.
I would like to see more research and like activity in like underprivileged countries. People who have GT in those countries, they don't have access. They don't have like the privilege we have to like have this community, have these kinds of trips, have access to all the medicine, all the healthcare that we need. And like I assume there's probably quite a few GT patients out there that aren't getting the care that they need. And I think finding better ways to identify GT and treat people, especially people who are underprivileged, would be a very good thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, in those underdeveloped countries, the only treatment really is platelet transfusions. And as y'all know, the more platelet transfusions you have, the more likely you are to get antibodies. And then, you know, what do you do if you have a bad bleed and platelets don't work? So it's kind of like a cross your fingers, pray, and hope for the best type of situation. And it's 2023, and the fact that that's still some people's reality is pretty scary.
I was gonna say representation too, but kind of in a different direction, like highlighting those in like the older generation, our generation, and the younger generation that kind of go out and do stuff. I mean, you guys know it's always been a huge thing for me to advocate for people doing what they want to do safely. So just representation of those people that kind of do climb over those hills and get to do things that people don't think we typically can do as people with bleeding disorders is something big. And I think it's something that really helps parents and younger kids see that.
That's definitely like something that would be nice to be seen more, like especially growing up. And like I know I lived the way I lived, like just did whatever I want, and that's how you did too. Kind of just ignored RGT, but
Kind of the best way to go about it.
it's the best way to go about it. Like mentally, like it's just like, all right, I'm just gonna do my own thing, not gonna dwell on it. But it'd be nice to see that more within the community, and just like people doing what they want to do, and like not living in a bubble. And it's just like, look, you can do all this other stuff. Like Peter does like all this weightlifting and like has the tattoos and everything. It's like you're not gonna be confined. You're not handicapped. Like you're going to be able to do more stuff than what the doctors tell you.
So I do ask this at the end of every single podcast. If you were to talk to your younger self today, what would you tell them about your GT and about how things are? What would you want them to know?
Anything I can say, someone probably has already told me when I was younger, because like in Austin and any of the other times I've met with people with GT, they all kind of, it's not repetitive, but it's kind of implying and trying to get across the same point that like you just gotta embrace it, and that's the only way you'll find peace with having GT.
Yeah, I think it gets easier as time passes to deal with this kind of thing. So like if you're struggling really hard in the moment, like you will definitely struggle less in the future.
I would tell my younger self anything. Even from childhood to adulthood, I lived my life unapologetically and authentically, and that's pretty much how I would do it all over again if I could.
I mean, you only have one life. Like, just keep living it, like, and you're gonna learn. You're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna learn from it. Everyone deals with their own stuff, and like, you're not the only one going through everything. Like, there's other people who have other issues too. Like, you're not alone.
I want to wrap up this special episode with a thank you to the officers of the GRF, Peter and Missy. Without them, the conference never would have been a reality. I also want to thank our amazing event team at Corinthian Events for helping us pull off a wildly successful first conference, and our sponsors, Hemab Therapeutics and Novo Nordisk. And last, but certainly not least, our GT community. On behalf of the entire board, we are honored and humbled by your trust to provide an event worthy of your support. We will be back to our regularly scheduled release dates of the first Sunday of each month starting in September. In the meantime, you can check out pictures from our conference at www.curegt.org. And as always, if you have GT and you have not found us yet, we do have a support group on Facebook.